Hey, today I'm answering all your nutrition questions. We're going to cover sugar, artificial sweeteners, fasting, whole foods versus processed food, and so much more. These questions have been submitted by my online clients. And before we get started, I wanted to remind you that if you want some help with your training and nutrition, to make sure you check out my training programs, meal plan, and so much more over on my website. I'll leave a link to everything in the description of this video, and you can pop over to my website and check it out after watching. So jumping right into the first question, it comes from Maddie, and she asks, what's a good replacement for sugar? For example, what is a good alternative instead of getting a sugary snack? Now, I'm assuming that Maddie means getting a snack when she's out, so say at a supermarket. And it depends on where you live, because in my experience, if you're in North America, you tend to have a lot more options than here in New Zealand and Australia. Unfortunately, there just tends to be less options when you're in supermarkets. But I can give you some guidelines for when you are trying to choose a snack. And the first thing I would do is head over to the protein bar section and look for something like protein bars or protein balls, not bliss balls, because bliss balls tend to be a lot different in terms of their macros and the amount of sugar they have, but protein balls. And then a couple of guidelines. The first thing is that you're looking for real food ingredients, so have a look at the ingredient list and make sure it's things that you mostly recognize. And the second thing is to make sure it's high in protein, and usually when it comes to protein bars, you're looking at trying to get at least 12 grams of protein per bar. And then the third thing is to look at the amount of sugar and try to get something that's less than about 12 grams of sugar per serving. And that way you're going to have a pretty decent snack. And that's why I said to choose the protein balls over the bliss balls, because bliss balls, even though they're marketed as healthy, often have way too much sugar per serving. And then I just wanted to quickly mention, if you are at home and trying to find a snack, and that's where I would be looking at things that replace that sweet craving. And so things like really delicious protein shakes or protein balls or protein pancakes, something that feels like a bit of a treat but has better macros and low sugar. There are so many things that you can make for yourself if you're at home that will hit the spot. And if you have my meal plan, you're gonna have so many options. So have a look there. There are at least 3 protein ball recipes in the meal plan, and those are a great option if you want a treat at home. The next question comes from Sarah. She asks, I would love to know more about sugar versus artificial sweeteners. I seem to be craving more sweetness as I get older and find it difficult to stay within a healthy guideline, which is around 50 grams, I think. I know there are sugar-free options, but are artificial sweeteners better or worse? So the first thing I wanted to talk about is Sarah's comment about craving more sugar as she gets older. And I don't think this is an age thing. I think this is more a stress and situational thing. I know that Sarah right now is in a particularly stressful time of life. She's got a lot going on with work, and she just got a new puppy, so her sleep isn't great, and I know her schedule is quite busy. And so rather than blame age, I would probably say it's more stress and working from home and just wanting a hit of something that makes her feel better. The second thing I wanted to talk about is the overall recommendations for sugar. And the first is the guidelines for added sugar intake. And usually the recommendation is about 25 grams per day. And so this is things like if you add sugar to your coffee, if you have sugary drinks, if you use things like maple syrup and honey, and yes, those count as sugar. And then we also need to talk about the recommendations for overall sugar intake. So that includes the added sugar as well as the natural sugars. And the recommendations in that sense are usually about 50 grams per day. So for me personally, I actually strive to get 0 grams of added sugar per day. I think it's better for overall health. It's definitely better for my teeth, and it's better for longevity. And when you actually start tracking your sugar intake, when you have something like a sweet potato and a banana in a day, you'll see that your sugar grams quickly add up to around that 50 grams per day. So it doesn't actually leave a lot of room for added sugar. And so my advice in this sense is to track sugar, try to keep it around 45 grams to 50 grams per day. And that's all of the sugar that you would take in. And tracking food is just such a great way to make sure that you don't go over your sugar intake. The second part of Sarah's question was whether artificial sweeteners are okay when you have a sugar craving. And the answer is it depends. It depends on the artificial sweetener. So on one hand, you have things like aspartame and sucralose, and I try to avoid those. They may potentially have some negative impacts on your health, and also aspartame has been shown in a few studies to possibly stimulate your appetite. And the studies aren't 100% clear on this, but just knowing that and knowing that you're trying to manage sugar cravings, it doesn't seem like a great thing to be consuming. And so on the other end, you have stevia and the more sort of natural sweeteners. And I think that stevia is a fairly safe alternative. I haven't seen anything negative in the research about stevia, and it may even potentially have some positive impacts for your health. And so if you are craving something sweet and you want to go for a stevia sweetened protein treat or a stevia sweetened drink, I think that would be a perfectly good alternative. The final thing that I wanted to say on this topic, though, is that if you are dealing with sugar cravings, this is a really complex topic, so we can't solve it in just one video, but I think that the answer doesn't lie in trying to find something sweet. I think the answer lies in trying to get on top of those cravings, and that's going to be a combo of things like making sure that your macros are balanced, you're getting enough protein, you're getting enough sleep, you're managing stress, and you're just practicing a bit of self-control. And so I think that's where the answer lies in this sense. The next question comes from Megan. She asks, if I am intermittent fasting but working out in the mornings, am I better to break my fast early to have a good protein intake straight after my workout? Or am I okay to work out, then wait another 4 hours before eating? So yes, it's really important that you get some food in post-workout, particularly protein. Because if you don't, your body is in what's called a catabolic state, and that means that it is actually going to take nutrients from the body to meet its requirements. And what happens is that you can actually end up breaking down muscle instead of building it. And that sort of defeats the purpose of working out. When it comes to fasting, there are all types of protocols, and the most important thing about fasting is that you just have a set period of time when you're not eating. And so let's say you have a 14-hour window where you're fasting, then you can have that at any time, and you're still going to get the benefits of fasting. So in Megan's case, I would just make sure that she has dinner finished early in the evening the night before she works out. So she might try to finish eating around 6 p.m. the night before, and then she can break her fast around 8 the next morning and replenish herself after her workout. Now, I haven't actually talked a lot about fasting on this YouTube channel, but I've recently started fasting myself, and I've been thinking about doing a video about it just to help you all to understand it better, because I know there are so many mixed messages and different protocols out there about fasting. And so make sure, if you're not yet a subscriber here on YouTube, that you subscribe to my channel so you catch that video as well as future videos from me. The next question that I wanted to answer comes from Randy. She asks, where does protein powder fall on the whole foods versus processed food spectrum? Also, does grass-fed and finished meat and organic free-range eggs affect period woes differently than non-grass-fed, non-organic meats and eggs? So there's a lot to unpack in this question. The first thing is the whole foods versus processed foods and protein powder. Protein powder is definitely a processed food. Say, for example, pea protein, it's made from peas. The peas are processed to make the protein powder. But I think in this case, it's more important to think about the overall quality of your diet rather than whether something's whole food or processed. Because let's talk about how we use protein powder. Let's say, for example, you're somebody that has a protein shake every day with a whole lot of good stuff added, like berries and greens and fiber supplement, and you've got this super nutritious protein shake that's part of your day. Well, that's really high quality food, even though you've got something that's processed in it, the protein powder. So I think it's more important to think that way. And the other thing that I love about protein powder is that it's a great alternative to always consuming animal products to meet your protein requirements. And overall, that can be better for your health too. So in this case, I wouldn't be worrying about whole foods versus processed food. So the second part of this question is interesting, and it requires giving you a quick background into what causes period pain. So I've got a lot of resources about this on my website, and I'll link to some of them in the description of this video if you want to learn more about what causes period pain and how to eat to manage it. But basically what you need to know is that meat and poultry and some fish and eggs, they have something called arachidonic acid, which stimulates the inflammatory pathways that cause you period pain. And unfortunately, it doesn't make any difference whether or not those things are grass-fed and organic. And so, unfortunately, Randy, regardless of where you're getting your meat and eggs, you're going to have to avoid them if you don't want to have period pain. Now, for those of you who are wondering how you do this, I have a protocol in my meal plan that teaches you how to cycle these type of foods around your menstrual cycle to help you better manage period pain. So you don't have to avoid them entirely, although limiting them really helps, but there are certain times in the month when you should be avoiding them entirely if you do struggle with period pain. And so if you want some help with this, I highly encourage you to check out my meal plan, which I'll also link to in the description of this video for you. The final question that I wanted to cover today comes from Jamie, and she asks, my doc told me I'm anemic and my iron is low. She has started me on iron tablets and I'm trying to eat more greens. I don't eat red meat because I had breast cancer a few years ago. Is there anything I can do to fight this fatigue? So first of all, the only way you're going to fight fatigue from low iron is to get your iron levels up. And when you're at the point where you're anemic, the only way you're going to get your iron levels up is with supplements. I have a history of low iron, so believe me, I have been through this for the past 10 years, and no amount of red meat will restore your iron levels if you're struggling with super low iron. It will definitely help, but you're going to need supplements as well. Now, Jamie seems to be saying that she's trying to meet her iron requirements by consuming greens as well. And unfortunately, what a lot of people don't know is that greens can actually block iron absorption. So even though things like spinach may have a little bit of iron, they actually have other compounds in them that can block iron absorption. And so when I was struggling with really low iron, I made sure to not consume greens when I was consuming other things that were high in iron, like red meat, or when I was taking my supplements. And so in actual fact, Jamie, you should be really careful about the timing of those greens and not relying on them to meet your iron requirements. So I hope you found this video helpful. This is the type of content that my online ladies get in an exclusive members area on my website and in an exclusive coaching group on Facebook. They have over 65 videos like this on all sorts of topics. So if you're considering becoming an online client, make sure that you check out my programs over on my website, femalefitnesssystems.com. And thanks everyone who submitted questions today. It's always fun doing these type of videos, and hopefully you found it useful. See you again soon.